Hi, I'm Dan with Family Home Theater, and it's time for an upgrade. So I just put out my how to build a home theater gaming PC video, and now here's my new home theater gaming PC. So I got all these parts here. I got the case without a side panel window because this is for home theater. I got my all-in-one water cooler. I got my motherboard. This is a power supply. This is an all-in-one water cooler. I have the memory. I've chosen to go with a Ryzen 7 5800X processor because this is also going to be my editing rig, so I figured, hey, 8 cores, and I got it at a good deal, so why not? And for graphics cards, I got myself an Asus TUF Gaming 3080 Ti. Yeah, I don't have a graphics card yet. I'm working on it, and it's probably not going to be this one. It'll be whatever, hopefully 3080 I can get. But anyway, let's get into this build. So let's get some of these scooted out. I'm going to start with the power supply and the case. So we will scooch these off to the side. So the case I got is the Fractal Design Define R5. I could have got the R7, but I need the internal drive bays for my Blu-ray reader, which you don't see in these parts. I'm going to borrow the actually the UHD Blu-ray drive from my other computer. So here we go. This is the first time I haven't opened any of these parts yet. And there it is. There's our monolith of a case. Let's go ahead and open this up and see what we got in here. Crash. So I see this case here has this, you can take the screws out, but then there's also this little tabby guy here which holds the side closed like that. Now, one of the reasons I got this case is because since this is a home theater gaming PC, this has the sound dampening material on the inside to try to keep all the computer noise on the inside. So there's foam on this one, there's foam on this one. Looks like if anyone was asking, because someone said a hack is if you get a case with the windows, sometimes the sides are interchangeable. These sides are not interchangeable because of this little mechanism we have here. On the back we have room for 2 serial ATA solid-state drives. And on the inside we have all these drive bays which can be moved around, and I'll be checking that out. Also, there's a door on the front to access the drive bays, and also this door can be changed so that it can be opened up, so it can open up from the other side, kind of like a refrigerator door. But this is actually going to work out for me, opening up this way, so I won't need to change that. But it's a pretty solid case, feels pretty hefty, and also these tops are removable for water cooling, like what I'm going to be doing here, well, all in one loop, but you could put a custom loop in this also, especially if you remove these front guys right here. So now I'm going to open up the power supply because that's the next thing that I'm going to do. The plan is I'm going to put the power supply inside the case first, and that way I can hook up a power cord with it. I'm going to leave the switch off, of course, but that will make sure that the case is grounded so that I don't have static electricity going on. So this is the Corsair RM750X. This was recently reviewed on Tom's Hardware. They reviewed the 850X, but as one of the better power supplies out there. The main reason I got this one is because, now for the 850X, I'm not sure about this one, how high it'll go, but on the 850 it would go up to about 400 watts before the fan ever even comes on. So I'd expect this one will probably do 300, maybe 350 watts before the fan comes on. That way this is going to be a very quiet power supply. Under normal, like if I'm watching a movie, there's not going to be any noise coming from this because movies don't require much power, and so the power supply is not going to be giving much juice to the system. Now, if I'm gaming, maybe the fan will spin up, but when I'm not gaming and I do have the computer on, it should be, or at least this power supply will be dead silent. Inside the box, we have our normal accoutrement of cables. This is a modular power supply. So we got our motherboard cable, serial ATA power, CPU power, more serial ATA power, a second CPU cable, 2 PCI Express cables, regular Molex power, and more serial ATA power. And then inside here, oh, zip ties. And inside we have our actual power supply right there. Now, as a fun fact, this is the box for the power supply for my current home theater PC, and yeah, it's a very similar. It's a Corsair RM series. This one's a 750i, but it never gave me any issues, so I bought Corsair again. Now, one thing I am going to mention about this is if you have a modular power supply, maybe even if it's from the same vendor, but if you have an older modular power supply, don't think that cables from other vendors are going to fit into this one, because these are not standard pinouts. Maybe they are now, but older ones are not. Case in point, I had a power supply from another build, and what happened is I think I was doing something to reconfigure my computer, but I'd grabbed a cable from the other brand of power supply. It was a modular power supply also, plugged into that power supply, plugged into the hard drive, and the hard drive let the magic smoke out. Now, fortunately, it was just a hard drive that contained movies. I was able to recopy them onto the hard drive, but that is an example of these cables not being standard. So if you have a modular cable from another manufacturer, the pinouts may not be the same. I did check on that one, and the pinout was not the same. So make sure you only use the cables that came with the power supply that you got. Don't mix your cables, don't put them in a box without identifying them. And then if you do have to grab a cable from maybe another power supply, double, triple check, make sure that the pinout is correct for the power supply and for the device you're plugging it into. Otherwise, you may let out some magic smoke. Alright, so let's get this installed inside the case. Now, in my other build, I had made a mistake because I installed the power supply like that. You don't want to do it like this because the fan is pointing up. It might make sense, yeah, the fan's pointing up in the case, but you might drop something into it. I never dropped anything into it, but these are supposed to be mounted like that. And there is a grill on the bottom here for the purpose of exhausting that power supply outside the bottom of the case. Now, you may want to be careful if you're going to set your case directly on the carpet. Maybe don't do that. Make sure it's on a solid surface. If you have to, just get like a small sheet of plywood or something that you can just set your case on that's hard so that this bottom doesn't get all clogged up. Now, real quick, I'll talk about the other components I got. So I got an Asus Tough Gaming. This is a B550 motherboard. I didn't need the higher end Z790 or 780. It's a Z series motherboard. I didn't want that one for two reasons. One, I don't plan to do aggressive overclocks. And also, the Z series boards have an active cooling fan on the motherboard, which small fans make noise, so I didn't want that. So I got a B series motherboard, which does not have a fan on it. This one comes with the Ryzen support. It says it's ready for the Ryzen 5000, so hopefully I don't have to find another processor just to flash the BIOS so that this processor will work in it. We'll find out. And then I got the AMD Ryzen 7 5800X. This is an 8-core processor, one of the newest Ryzen processors out there. Nice and fast, great for gaming, and it's just recently come back into supply after being out of stock for quite a while because of, the shortages. And this will be cooled with, I'm not a Corsair fanboy, but hey, Corsair makes pretty decent stuff, and also this was on sale on Amazon Prime Day. But I got a iCue H100i. This is a 240 millimeter water cooler. I guess if I could have also went with a 280 millimeter water cooler. Maybe I should have. It would have been a little bit quieter. But currently in my other computer, I have two NZXT water coolers, one for the graphics card and one for the processor. Those have worked pretty well, but this time I decided to go with the Corsair one. This one has good reviews on it. It's supposed to be pretty quiet, so we'll see how it performs. Now, this is another Amazon Prime Day deal. This is a Western Digital SN850 Black. It got really good reviews on Tom's Hardware, has really fast load times, really fast drive, and a really great deal. So I got this drive as my boot drive, and it's a 1 terabyte drive, so it'll give me plenty of space for programs, games, and video editing, because this will also be my editing rig. Yes, I do edit videos in my home theater. Hey, it's my home theater. I'll do with it what I want. For memory, well, this is a Prime Day deal. This is a TeamForce RAM. There was a review on Tom's Hardware where it had problems with other motherboards except for Asus motherboards. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. But this is DDR4 3600, and the timings on it are a little bit slower. I think this is a 18. I think this has a cast latency of 18, whereas others had 15 or 16, so it is a little slower, but it was also 40 bucks cheaper, so hopefully this isn't going to slow me down too much, because I saved some money with it. And then let's see here, what else is there? And there's the graphics card, which I have not been able to source yet. Plan to get a 3080. I'm in an EVGA for a 3080 Ti, but it's the XC3, so maybe I'll pop on it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. For now. So let's put the power supply in. You see the lengths I go through to get you quality YouTube content? Subscribe already! Alright, let's get to it. Let's get our screwdriver out. Not our orange juice and vodka. Okay, so let's get our power supply in there. We get our bag with all our zippity-doo-dah tags, ties, and our screws. Sure, those are out of the way. Now again, we are installing this with the fan down, venting to the bottom of the case. That way we don't risk dropping screws in our power supply, which could be a bad thing. Oh, and there's this tagger here. It says, hey, there's a 0 dB mode. If you turn it on and the fan doesn't spin up, it's supposed to be that way. Now, whenever putting screws in, I like to do them just finger tight to start. That way, if you have to move things around, you can still slide things around if the screws are just finger tight. And then once all the screws are in, and they're in the spot they need to be, then you can tighten them down. Alright, now our power supply is in. I'm going to grab this cord and go ahead and plug it in. Alright, now we're plugged in. We'll just make sure that the switch is in the official position, off. And what that's going to do for that is it's going to provide a path to ground for this case. That way I can make sure that as long as I'm touching it, although this is painted here, but as long as I'm touching some sort of bare metal somewhere, that will prevent any static charge from building up on me so I don't zap any of my components. Now real quick, let's also go ahead and start moving these around. I think what I want to do, since I got a micro AHCI motherboard, is I'm going to put my hard drives, actually I can only do 3 here, I don't think I can do all 4. Actually I just have 3 hard drives that go into this computer. So let's go ahead and take this one out. And the reason I'm doing this is because I would like to get a graphics card, or at least a all-in-one water cooler for the graphics card. So I want to have this space up here available for a radiator if that time comes. And it feels like there's some screws down there, so let's go ahead and pop this bottom off. This bottom filter slides out, just like that. This is mounted to the bottom here. Alright, before I get too far with that, I need to do my cables on my power supply here. So actually it looks like what will be best is if I don't install this right here for now. Let's figure out which power supply cables I'll need. Our motherboard box, just to take a quick look at that. There's our Wi-Fi antenna. Motherboard, and also what's in here. SATA cables, standoffs, and the back plate, and stickers. Okay, I want to take a quick look at this. Grounded, grounded. Alright, so we got one CPU power connector and the main board connector there. So I only need one CPU power connector. Okay. CPU cable, which I'm going to look at the manual. I'm going to RTFM. I'm going to just read the instructions. Alright, let's check our motherboard's fitment. Okay, that'll fit nicely. Let's put our I/O bracket on. Okay, now let's look in our box of fun here. This came with the case, and this is all of our bits and pieces, bits and bobs. Zip ties, screws, standoffs, all that stuff. I'm interested in standoffs right now. So rubber isolation feet. Okay, so let's see where we need to put our motherboard. We're going to standoff here, here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. And there we are. I'm thinking of it. What? Is this too small? It's too small. Is it too small? Put this guy on there now. And one of our standoffs is wrong, so let's fix that. No! There we go, there's our key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. I was wondering what this guy was. This is a standoff tool. So I guess you put your standoff in there and use a standard Phillips screwdriver to screw it in. So now I like that they have this little key nipple here. That way you get your motherboard oriented just right. Now when you screw down a motherboard, you don't want to Superman it down. You just want to get it snug, but it doesn't need to be super torqued. If you super torque it, then you run the risk of damaging your motherboard. So if this is your first time building a new computer, just get the screws on the motherboard down snug. I mean, this isn't going to be in an aircraft or anything like that. This doesn't have to be like incredible mil-spec tight. Even mil-spec's not that tight, but just needs to be snug. It doesn't need to be. We had 8 holes, 7 screws. This is going to be the tough one right here, right? There we go. And you don't need to push down really tight on the screwdriver either. And if you do that, like while you're over here, you run the risk of hitting one of these little delicate components. You don't want to do that. You don't want to hose your system. So let's just make sure they're all snug. Alright, let's go ahead and put our processor in. So this is the Ryzen 7. Now, for those of you who've never built a computer before, this is your CPU socket. It's a special type of socket called a ZIF socket. ZIF, Z-I-F, stands for Zero Insertion Force. So once you get your CPU out, you should not have to push it. You don't need to press it down in there really hard. If you're having to press it to get it in there, you're doing it wrong. What you need to do is there's this little lever right here. You pull this up, the whole socket slides that way, and now the processor will just drop right in. So let me break the seal. There it is. Now this CPU here does not come with a box cooler. If it does come with a box cooler, I recommend just throwing it away and getting something better. Comes with the Ryzen badge on it, and there's our processor. Now the back of this processor has very fine pins on it. You can see it's got really tiny, small pins on there. You do not want to bend any of those pins. That's why I say when you put it in there, make sure that you're not using force. It should just drop right in with zero effort. So we will very carefully pick this up. Now these processors, one side is going to have a little keying triangle on it. It'll only go in one way. You can't put it in wrong. So if it's not just dropping in, you're doing something wrong here. Let's see, where is... Alright, there's our keying arrow, and there's a little arrow right here. It's very hard to see, but there's a little arrow right there. So it should just go right in there. Again, no force, you just set it right down there. No pushing, no shoving, you just set it in there. You push the bar down, and your processor is locked in place, and it's not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to put the cooler on there yet. I'm going to put the rest of my components on there. So next I'll do my M.2 drive. It's going to go under here. I need a smaller Phillips head. And this is our M.2 slot. I see that's a little rubber thingamajigger right there. Alright, let's look back in this. Just read the instructions if you're not sure about something. IO shield, M.2 rubber package, that must be this. M.2 screw, gaming sticker, and antenna, support DVD. Okay, so this is the SSD rubber thing. And then we got this thing that says remove all over it. Let's see, are these screws captive? These screws are captive. That's nice that these are captive screws. Okay. Okay, so it shows right here when installing a M.2 drive that there's a sticker here that goes on top. It says it's optional. That's for extra cooling. Alright, here's our... So this will be our primary boot drive. Let's open it up. And what does this come with? So there's the drive. And nothing else. This is our M.2 NVMe drive. This will be our boot drive. This is 1 terabyte of storage. It actually is not that big. And they're always surprisingly small when you get them. There it is. And it just slots in. So I see that this one, checking the size here, I'm going to need to put the standoff right there. So let's set this guy aside. You know, let's try the standoff tool here. And we can use a Phillips screwdriver to tighten it. Now I think that what this is for is if you have a SSD like this one, where it has chips on one side, it has chips on the one side, but not on the back. If this was a 2 terabyte one, this would have chips on the back. But since it doesn't, we will use this because that will give us the space we need to get to this drive and make sure that we have some sort of cooling on both sides. There we go. I mean, the original one wasn't on there perfectly straight anyway, but there's that. Now this will require a little bit of, not a lot of force, just a teeny tiny bit, because the top of the screw here, and I'll show you another one, does have a little groove in it. So once you get to that groove, then you know your drive is in. There. That's in. It kind of stands up like that. You push it down and it should just go right into that groove. That's how you know it's in far enough. There's that little groove right there. It feels like there's still a little bit of space under there, but that's okay because this is going to go on top. All our components are on top, so that should make sure that we have somewhat of cooling. And it's actually mainly the controller that's going to get hot on this. And really, these can be run without too much cooling, and it won't really affect them too much unless you're doing benchmarks or you're doing like constant read and writes, all that wonderful stuff. Let's see. Okay, so we got one shot at this. Let's make it count. Because there's a sticker. Alright, that one's in. Looks like that one's in. There, now that's in there, and theoretically at least, actually it was stuck down there, so that should be providing cooling for our drive. My other drive didn't have cooling on it, but it only went to 2 gigabytes per second, 2,000 megabytes per second. This goes up to 7,000 megabytes per second, but yeah, it looks like as I push that, it is on contact there. Okay, alright, now let's install our memory. Let's not forget to install memory. Let's remember to install memory. Again, we refer to our manual because we want these installed in 2 different ranks. Okay, so the recommended configuration is I have a DIMM in A2 and B2. So A2 and B2, so these 2 light gray ones. Boy, these are some beefy heat sinks. So this is keyed. It only goes in one way, so if you look, this is the wrong way. This is the right way. See, the center key here is offset a little bit, so make sure that it's set right, and then you just have to there we go. So it's on this side, they come out, this side it does not. So you get those little locking things out. Make sure it's in the slot. Push it straight down, and you should hear that satisfying click. There we go. And then we do the same thing with this one. Let's see, that's the wrong way. This is the right way. It does take a little bit of force, but you'll get that satisfying click. And now we got our memory, and that is 32 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes each, so 32 gigabytes total of memory. Now, before I start plugging stuff into this, just in case something weird happens and it decides to turn on, I will now do the water cooling. So let me clean up this area a little bit, because I got boxes everywhere. All right, all in one water cooler. So I got the Corsair H110. I almost returned this in favor of a custom loop, because I thought I had this pipe, getting this hydro copper EVGA card. But thought about it, and it's like, this is... A home theater PC case is not a good place for a custom loop because there's no window, so you can't look at it to see if there's something obviously wrong. So the first indication of something obviously wrong with the water loop after it's been installed, and I mean, assume you test it, but first indication something will be wrong after a few months is your PC stops working because you didn't notice a water leak or something like that. So I got this all-in-one cooler here. So what do we got? We got some fans. And if you want, you can get Noctua fans, so it'll be absolutely quiet. And there's the rest of the cooler. Power cable and mounting goodness. So this is our AM4 kit. There's a Threadripper kit, Intel kit. We're interested in AM4. So the AM4 kit comes with these doodads here, along with these two little guys right here. Alright, so we will go ahead and install this. It's going to install with the logo facing up. Take this off of our CPU paste. So what we do, we take these off and we put these on. Like that. And then we have these thingamajiggers hanging down here. Whee! I finally did it. These will clamp onto these, and that will hold down our thing. And we're going to need one of these thumb screws to do that. So let's go ahead and pre-install this. And we'll have these just so they're just a little bit loose. They don't just fall right out on me. And we're just going to try and tighten them up nice and evenly. Don't want to tighten them so much that we yank our thingy right out of the motherboard here. And it says tighten the screws until secure. Yeah, it feels like it's pretty secure right there. Now let's see here. There's a SATA power connector. And these two things, and this will probably go to our CPU fan as a speed monitor. So CPU fan. Cable management's always so much fun. So now let's go ahead and mount this guy. We're getting there. We are getting there. Okay, yeah, there are cables there. Alright, so we need to take out these top things here. Right there. And that just popped right out. I think I will put the fans on this side here. So this is the top, let's have the airflow going up. Well, this picture shows the fan blades pointing down, so we'll have them pointing down. Now we want to think about where we want this wire to come out. I want it to come out towards the back, so let's go ahead and have these come out this way. As with all the other screws, you don't need to go super duper tight. Just snug. I'm gonna back it off just a little bit because we don't want these snug, because we want to be able to move this around a little bit just so we can make sure that we got all our other screws in a position where they can line up. And also what we have here is this USB thingy, which will go to a free USB header. Hopefully I have enough. Okay, let's get our I/O cables sorted out. So I gotta take this back out. Oh boy. Alright, now we'll get all our stuff plugged in. So I could do a post test right now, but this processor does not have integrated graphics. So I need to harvest the graphics card from my other computer now. This is my old home theater computer and gaming PC. Still works well. So why did I get an upgrade? Well, because I mean, I need a 4K projector, I need a 4K gaming machine, right? So what I need to do is harvest this guy. This is my GTX 970 graphics card. This is going to go into the other PC, the new PC, the new PC for now. Okay, I believe we are free. Just need to hit up this guy right here. And there we are. One GTX 970. Looks like those copper things are still on there. And on there, good. Let's clean this off a little bit. So I think we're ready for a first power on test. Will we get magic smoke? Will we find out we need a new BIOS because this won't support the Ryzen 5000? Power supply is on. Everything seems to be plugged in. I do not have a mouse and keyboard plugged in, so let's do that. Okay, I got my wireless keyboard. There it goes. That fan is loud. Oh! We have a BIOS screen. What's it say? I can't read it from here. New CPU installed. Please enter setup. Press F1 to run setup. Alright, so successful post-test. I'll be tweaking with these settings and I'll get back to you for putting in the hard drives and everything. There, it goes in like that, and it's isolated from this. The screws actually bottom out after a little bit, so that way you don't crush these too much. And then it just slides right in there like that. So I got 3 more to go. I got one more thing to do here, and that is to take the M.2 drive from my other computer, put it in this one, just so I can copy over the games and stuff, because I probably got 150 gigs. I guess it's not a lot compared to some people, but I don't want to re-download that. I've downloaded enough already this month. And this leads me to my main critique of this board here, is that this slot that I'm putting this drive in is actually the PCI Express 4 slot. The other slot, the one that has that wonderful little heatsink provided for it is not the PCI Express Gen 4, it's the PCI Express Gen 3 slot. It's actually the slower slot. So for some reason they provided a heatsink for the slot that you're less likely to use if you actually read the manual and figure out, hey, this is not the right slot to use for a fast drive. So I've taken steps to remedy that. I have ordered a M.2 heatsink off of Amazon, and I'm going to take that drive out. Hopefully that adhesive there is not too terribly sticky, but I'm going to take that drive out, put it into this slot since this is the faster slot, and I'll just leave that slot empty. Okay, but everything looks good here now. It's all nice and cable managed. Let's go ahead and start it up and see if everything detects, and then I'm just gonna start getting stuff copied over, and I'm gonna take a break because it's 1 in the morning now. I've been at this almost all day, although I did take a several hour break to go on a little date night. But other than that, yeah, a lot of work here. Cable managed this one real nice. I figure even though I'm trying to get a new graphics card, usually when I cable manage something I end up having to change it, so maybe that'll give me some luck getting a new graphics card. Also, this memory here is not coming up right in BIOS, and I looked it up in the compatibility list and it's not quite there, so I'm probably going to end up returning this memory, and I'm going to get something that is on the compatibility list so that I don't have to guess around with speeds and stuff like that and set everything manually. I don't think I want to do that. I'll price it all out here. Can you tell I'm tired? Copying my game files over to the other drive, getting about 1.4 gigs per second on the transfer. That's pretty good. Of course, limiting factor is my old drive, which that's about the right read speed for the old drive. Maybe a little bit faster for sequential reads, but that still looks pretty good. And that's the power of a SSD versus a spinny disk. Our mechanical drive's doing the transfer 100 megabytes per second, which is pretty good for a mechanical drive, but boy, it's going to take 5 hours to copy a couple terabytes. It's a long time. Alright, so there we are with the finished product. Well, almost finished. The memory will probably change, like I said, and I'm going to move my fast drive up here once I get a heatsink in for it, and hopefully a new graphics card at some point. My SSD right now is in this bottom slot down here, but I found out that that slot on the motherboard is limited to PCI Express Gen 3 speeds. The only one that actually has the PCI Express Gen 4 speeds is this one up here. Now, that one down there has this heatsink, which I'm like, okay, that's cool, this motherboard has a heatsink, I'll put the drive there. But apparently, I don't know why they gave you a heatsink for the slower slot. Maybe they figured if you're getting a drive for the faster slot, then you're going to have a drive with an integrated heatsink. I don't know. So I got this heatsink here to put on that drive. This is a Sabernet heatsink, and it comes with a top plate here and a bottom plate, screws together like that. There's an extra pad here for single-sided drives, which mine is a single-sided drive. And then it comes with these screws and a screwdriver here. Alright, so when installing this, it looks like, according to the instructions, this has to be even with that right there. And then this special screw they provided should be long enough to get through both of those. Okay, so since this is single-sided, what I mean by that is if you flip it over, there are no chips on this side. So this is single-sided. Since it's single-sided, those chips do take up a little bit of space, and so what we need to do is provide some extra thickness. So we're going to take that off, and we're just going to set this right inside there like that. Now we're going to line this up so that it is even at the end there. Just like that. Take the tape off the top. Set this in here, trying to be very careful to line up the screw holes with the provided holes. There they are. Now we'll just gently hold this down. I shall go ahead and tip it on its side here. Tighten it down, and there we go. Now we have a nice heatsink for our solid state drive. It'll keep it nice and cool under those occasions where we do have heavy load on it and it could cause thermal throttling, or just for peace of mind. There are cheaper heatsinks you can get out there, but I like this one because this has this cradle here so that you know that it's never going to fall off. If you have a heatsink that's just adhesive that just sticks on top of the drive, well, number one, it could be hard to get off later on if you ever do need to get it off. But number two, I have had heatsinks fall off, especially since I've had memory cards where I put new coolers on them, and sometimes the adhesive on the cheap little heatsinks leaves something to be desired. So I got this particular one. I spent more for this, but this, since it has this cradle, it's never going to fall off. So let's put it inside the computer. And this right here is what I'm talking about when I talk about heat sinks I put on graphics cards for aftermarket cooling. Not these ones specifically, I haven't had a problem with these, but I have had others that have fallen off before. And so make sure you read reviews on heat sinks, make sure that they, and of course, over the course of years, who knows, but I've had these on there for roughly 6 years now, and they don't seem to have fallen off. They don't seem to be loose at all, so these ones actually worked out pretty well for me. Put that guy in. There we go. Now I got my fast drive installed in the fast slot. Now we can go see how it works out. Make sure everything else in here is the way that I had it before. Everything's all cable managed. Oh, and the final step here. I still need to do this. Shiny. Okay, so here we are in the BIOS. We're going to go into advanced mode. Advanced onboard devices configuration. So we have our M.2 one-link mode. I have that set for Gen 4 now. And that looks better. I was getting about 3,000 megabytes per second earlier. So getting to the end of the crystal mark test. Man, the heatsink does feel warm to the touch. So it is getting heat out of there, and should be helping a lot with these fast drive reads. So no PC build video would be complete without a load of benchmarks, and I did do a lot of benchmarks before and after on both my old PC and my new PC using the same graphics card. So as of this video, I haven't gotten a graphics card for the computer yet, so all the components except the graphics card were upgraded.
So my old PC had a i7 6700K processor in it, and my new PC has a Ryzen 5800X. Both PCs do still have DDR4 memory, but the old one was, I think, 2600. This one's 3600. But yeah, let's see what we did with benchmarks using the same graphics card, but just with a newer PC. Now, processor-wise, I use Cinebench to compare the old PC to new PC, and I'll just let the video speak for itself. So as we can see, the Ryzen is just dominating this test, and it's going through much faster and able to render this entire scene so much quicker. In fact, it's about 3 times quicker, because in the time it takes the old processor to render the scene once, the new processor is going to end up rendering the scene about 3 times here. In terms of gaming benchmarks, on the Heaven benchmark in 1080, I got quite a bit of an uplift. I went from about 55 frames per second up to 80 frames per second. So from a pretty decent frame rate to even higher frame rate. Now, of course, since my projector doesn't go over 60 hertz, it's kind of a moot point. There are gaming projectors out there that they will do 120 hertz, but I don't have one of those just yet. And I'm looking at the JVC line, which currently does not have over 60 hertz, but there are some new JVCs maybe coming out in September, so we'll see if they upgrade to HDMI 2.1. Now, moving on to the rest of the benchmarks, they tell a bit of a different story. So in Final Fantasy XIV, I got a frame rate boost, but it was a very, very tiny boost. Like, I doubt that anyone would even notice this boost. I also tested it at 4K, and going from about roughly 21 to 22, maybe 22 and a half frames per second, not really a huge difference there in 4K either. Now, for the load time in the game, the load time was cut in half, of course, going to the new drive, which is Western Digital SN850. Has about 7,000 megabyte per second read time, but it does load twice as fast as my old M.2 drive, which was a Samsung AHCI SN850 I think. It was before the NVMe drives had really come out, so, but it was still a fast M.2 drive, but the Western Digital is just a lot faster, as we can see. And some of this load time difference may also be attributable to just the faster processor. And Final Fantasy XV, pretty much the same, the blue being the score for the 1080 benchmark, and the gold being the score for the 4K benchmark. Interestingly enough, for some reason, it might have to double check this. It went down a little bit with the 2021 gaming PC. I'm not sure what exactly happened there, but with the 4K, it is a little bit faster on the 2021 gaming PC. And then in the Time Spy benchmark, and this is pretty much reflected also in the Firestrike benchmark, no real difference in frame rates between the 2015 and the 2021 gaming PC. The only difference is in the CPU benchmark that tests the CPU specifically. Yeah, the Ryzen is over twice as fast as my old processor, but as far as just raw frames per second performance, there's actually no real difference there between the same graphics card in the old versus the new PC. Looking at read speeds, this is the Crystal Mark benchmark from my old PC, getting roughly 2,000 megabytes per second transfer rate, which is still pretty good. Now, this was the Western Digital SN850 in the new PC, but this was in the PCI Express Gen 3 slot. So there we were getting about over 3,000 megabytes per second, which was actually pretty darn good. And then going to the full Gen 4 slot, I got unlocked the full speed of that drive, getting the full 7,000 megabytes per second read speed. However, interestingly enough, when I did test it in the Final Fantasy XIV load time, there is a less than 1 second difference between the PCI Express Gen 3 and Gen 4 slots. So there's something else coming into play other than just raw read speeds. But I will say that after having edited this whole video together, the new computer was really smooth. Even though I had some of those clips sped up to a 6,400% normal speed, I didn't really have any issues. Everything worked pretty smoothly. So a combination of a faster processor, a really fast M.2 drive, and the 32 gigs of RAM, and it worked great for editing this video, which of course it's only quote-unquote 1080. It's not 4K, but still, I'm pretty satisfied with the editing performance of this new computer. So that wraps it up for this video, and as a little teaser for those of you who have actually made it all the way to the end, here's something to look forward to pretty soon once I get that video put together. It shouldn't take as long to put together as this video because there's not as much building going on, but hey, if you want to see how this PC performs with a new generation graphics card, well, be on the watch out for that video. And I'm probably also going to post a short video of just the M.2 Heatsink installation, because I think that could be useful for some people out there. So there it is, Dan from Family Home Theater. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.